Hello, everybody. Welcome to Unit 5. And we are now five units in. It's hard to believe that we are already there. After this unit, we have 4 more units left before we are done for the year as far as U.S. history goes. Unit 5 covers, I called it a divided nation, because really the major focus of it is going to be the build up to the Civil War, what happens in the 1850s that leads us to that point, and then the Civil War itself and Reconstruction. And I like to look at history, and a lot of people kind of define U.S. history as the Civil War is like that middle point in it. And you're going to see that from the very beginning, or hopefully that you have seen from the very beginning of us talking about the birth of our country, you could see that this kind of conflict was on the horizon. There was eventually going to be a conflict between the North and the South, and there are going to be a lot of different things that go into that conflict. Of course, the major thing being slavery, but you have some other areas as well where things weren't working out great between the two sides. So I like to say when we talk about the Civil War, you're going to look at three S's. Slavery. Obviously, that is something that had been an issue from the very beginning, the Constitutional Convention, and really the founders of our country kind of kicked that can down the road for somebody else to have to deal with. So slavery. Sectionalism. Really, you have two parts of the country, and even this goes back to the colonies. You have two parts of the country that are very, very different. They were founded by different people coming here, even though they were English. They had very different views. And you're going to see the differences between those two sides lead to two areas of the country that are very, very different from each other. Again, the South, you have based in agriculture and in farming. The North, you have a society based in manufacturing. So the two sides of the country are very different. And even if you look at North and South today, there still are a lot of differences between the North and the South. I'm from Virginia and my wife is from Michigan, and it's amazing the differences in like language and how you do things and food and that kind of stuff between the North and the South even today. So sectionalism, two parts of the country, very, very different. And then the last one would be states' rights. And going with that, we talked about in the last unit, Andrew Jackson and the nullification crisis. You're going to see that tariffs and politics are going to be one of those things that split the two sides. And one thing that people don't realize is that in 1860 or 1861, right at the beginning of the Civil War, that many Americans still defined themselves by the state that they lived in. And this feeling was especially strong in the South. And you're going to see this repeatedly with people that fought in the Civil War, with guys like Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson, and a list goes on and on and on, that people viewed themselves as, I'm a Virginian, not an American, but I am a Virginian first, an American second. So that falls under the whole states' rights thing. Obviously, with states' rights, you have the right to have slaves, the rights to fight tariffs, and that composes a lot of different things there, the whole states' rights issue, which we'll jump into when we talk about the Civil War. And then after the Civil War, you have Reconstruction in the attempt to try to rebuild the country after the Civil War. And you're going to see with Reconstruction, the legacy of Reconstruction, not that great. Lincoln's plan for Reconstruction was to do everything that he could to unify the country, but because of Lincoln's assassination, you're going to see that political power, such as the radical Republicans, take over Reconstruction, and it leads to a lot of animosity between North and South, but it's also going to lead to a lot of animosity in the South between the races. We're going to have a lot of people very upset with the results of the Civil War and what happened in the South, and they're going to take out a lot of that aggression on the freed African Americans in the South, who they blamed for a lot of the issues, but they're also going to take out that aggression on radical or Republicans in general as well. And really, you're going to see the legacy of Reconstruction is that at the end of Reconstruction, yes, the country is united as one, but you're going to see a lot of ways the country is still very similar to how it was before the Civil War. And in a lot of ways, you're going to see the radical Republicans and Congress in general drops the ball on like securing the rights of African Americans and that kind of thing. So you look at this time period, and even though there's going to be a lot of conflict and fighting through it, you're going to see in the end that besides the big boom in manufacturing that's going to happen in the North during the Civil War and as a result of the Civil War, that the country is going to look very, very similar, minus the 700 plus thousand lives that would be lost as a result of the Civil War. And when we talk about the Civil War today, this is something that is still very much a part of our culture and still very much part of the discussion when we talk about the Civil War. I'm sure that you saw this past summer as we were having Confederate monuments taken down in the South, and people question, well, why are those monuments even there and that kind of stuff? So we still have those questions. Obviously, we still have the legacy of racial issues stemming out even from before the Civil War, but also out of the Civil War as well. The Civil War as a whole is probably the most wrote about thing in American history. I think without a doubt, it definitely is the most wrote about thing in U.S. history. So the legacy of the Civil War is still very, very prevalent even today. And I think having a good understanding of the Civil War and the issues that led to it will help you better understand America in general, before the war and even after the war, and what the United States looks like today. I read a fantastic book after I got out of college. Actually, a college professor recommended it to me. And if you really want an understanding of the South after the Civil War and then the legacy of the Civil War in the South even today, I would encourage checking it out. It's written by Tony Horowitz and it's called Confederates in the Attic. And basically what Tony Horowitz does is he wants to better understand how Southerners view the Civil War. And so he travels around the South, seeing all these different things, talking to people to get their viewpoints. And it's very, very interesting to have an understanding, get a good understanding of why the South, even today, views the Civil War the way they do. And I will say, in a lot of areas, you see those lingering animosities from the Civil War have kind of gone away, but in a lot of places you still see those animosities from the Civil War. So Civil War, that is what actually got me into history. My dad, when we were kids, when we went on vacations, pretty much all the vacations somehow involved a Civil War battlefield in some way. So for me, I'm very passionate about the Civil War because it's the thing I'm most interested about in U.S. history. And with the Civil War, there is always something that you can be learning about it. Even today, spending my whole life learning about the Civil War and reading about the Civil War, I am always learning and knowing, gaining new knowledge about the Civil War, about the people that fought in it, and about the strategy, and about the legacy of the Civil War, really. So this unit, again, is 7 days, and we'll be covering the cause of the Civil War, the build up to it, and then the legacy of Reconstruction here in the South. So as with the other units, you'll have some narratives that you need to do for this unit, as well as a writing assignment. Also in this unit, we're going to do a project-based assessment talking about the causes of the Civil War and what you personally see as the most important causes of the Civil War. Another interesting thing with the Civil War, which we'll do an activity with that, is the name of the Civil War. Now today, most people call it the Civil War, but after the war, North and South, it was called the War Between the States. It wasn't known as the Civil War. That came a little bit later in history where people started calling it the American Civil War. So I think what people name the Civil War reveals a lot about their own personal thoughts on the reasons and causes behind the Civil War. But yeah, as a country, most people knew it as the War Between the States for quite a while until the name American Civil War became a more popular name for that. So I really do hope you enjoy this unit and learning about the Civil War. Again, it's one of those things that really captures my imagination, especially living here in Virginia, where a ton of Civil War history is, especially if you go into Richmond area there. I mean, you can't walk anywhere without tripping over some sort of Civil War history. As far as this area, Lynchburg really was a big producing city during the Civil War, and Lynchburg has really the fame of it never fell to the Union during the Civil War. General David Hunter of the Union Army actually marched down. His plan was to march into Lynchburg. Lynchburg probably would have been burned to the ground, but because of some trickery by the Confederate forces that was here, Lynchburg was never burned to the ground, and that really would help Lynchburg as a city to have a reemergence after the Civil War and really emerge as one of the stronger cities in the South because Lynchburg wasn't burned like many other cities in the South were. So, as always, enjoy this unit. If you have any questions or just want to share anything with me that you are learning, I'd love to hear that type of thing. Or even if you just want to have a conversation about the Civil War, I would love to have that with you. I hope you have a great day and enjoy jumping into the Civil War.